Antonio was a merchant who lived in Venice, a prosperous city in Italy. In those days, that is about 500 years ago, sea voyages were dangerous, and yet some adventurous merchants traveled across the seas. Some others spent a lot of money in sending ships to faraway countries. These ships brought back spices and other treasures from India and other countries. The merchants sold these things in Europe. They made a lot of profit in this business. At the time when the story began, Antonio was waiting for his ship to return with merchandise. He had put almost all his money in the ship. Antonio was a kind man. He had many friends, but his best friend was Bassanio. Bassanio was a young and handsome nobleman, but unfortunately he had no money. Bassanio wanted to marry Portia. Portia was beautiful and intelligent. She was the only daughter of a very wealthy man. Her father had died, leaving her a large estate. In his will, Portia's father had written how Portia's husband should be selected. He had set a test for her suitors. They had to choose between 3 caskets, one of gold, one of silver, and one of lead. Each casket had something written on it. On the gold casket it was written, "Whoever chooses me shall gain what many men desire." On the silver casket, "Whoever chooses me shall get as much as he deserves." On the casket of lead, "Whoever chooses me must give an hazard all he has." One of Portia's suitors was the Prince of Morocco. He chose the gold casket. But when he opened the casket, the message inside said that it was not the right casket. "All that glitters is not gold." Another suitor, the Prince of Aragon, chose the silver casket. But that too was not the right casket. Bassanio wanted to try his luck with the casket. To that, he had to travel to Belmont, where Portia lived on her estate. He needed money for that. When Antonio came to know this, he wanted to help. He told Bassanio to borrow money in his, which is Antonio's name. They went to Shylock, the Jewish moneylender, and asked him for the money. Shylock had a lot of money, but he was not at all generous. Money was all that he cared for. He did not like Antonio, because Antonio sometimes lent people money without charging any interest for it. So Shylock decided to take advantage of this situation. He gave them the money on a strange condition. If Antonio failed to return the money within 3 months, Shylock would cut off a pound of Antonio's flesh. Antonio agreed to this and borrowed the money for Bassanio. Bassanio went to Belmont. When he saw the casket, he chose the lead one. That was the right casket, and Bassanio won Portia's hand by choosing it. Portia too was glad to marry Bassanio. In the meanwhile, Shylock heard that Antonio had lost his ship. He was very happy that Antonio would not be able to pay the money. He took Antonio to court and demanded that he fulfill the strange and cruel condition. The Duke liked Antonio and was sorry for him, but what could he do? Antonio had written a bond to Shylock, and according to the law, Shylock was right. When Bassanio and Portia heard all this, they rushed back to Venice. Portia told Bassanio to pay Shylock twice the amount to save Antonio. But Shylock was adamant. He demanded only a pound of Antonio's flesh. Everyone in the court, including the Duke, felt that Shylock's demand was inhuman. The Duke asked Shylock to show some mercy towards Antonio. But Shylock was not ready to do so. He felt that Antonio and others had treated him badly before, and he wanted revenge. Just then a young lawyer entered the court. He said that he would fight Antonio's case. He asked Antonio whether he had agreed to Shylock's conditions. Antonio said that he had agreed. Then the young lawyer requested Shylock to show mercy, thought the law was on Shylock's side. The lawyer pleaded that mercy is a quality of God himself. When a person shows mercy to someone else, they are both blessed. Mercy was more valuable than a king's crown. But all this had no effect on Shylock. The young lawyer then said that the law allowed Shylock to take a pound of flesh, and he could do that. At the same time, the lawyer warned that while cutting off the flesh, Shylock should not shed even one drop of Antonio's blood. Also, he should cut exactly 1 pound of flesh, nothing less, nothing more. That would not be allowed by the law. Shylock realized that he could not do what the young lawyer asked him to do, and he accepted his defeat. Antonio's life was saved. Who was the young lawyer? Bassanio and Antonio found out later that it was none other than Portia herself, dressed as a young man. Later it was learnt that Antonio's ships were saved, and so he had not in fact lost his money. Thus the story, which could have ended in a tragic manner, ended happily.